if we're talking about Avraham Avinu's mother, there's a very simple question. How should we view her? Was she a good woman or was she a bad woman? Was she a tzadekis or was she a mershas? It's obviously a historic question for which we'll never know the answer because we never met her, right? We just know that she sacrificed her life. She took incredible risks, according to Midrashim, to make sure that Avraham Avinu didn't get killed. But that doesn't necessarily make her a righteous woman, that just makes her a mother. But how should we look at her? Is she a tzadekis or she is a mershas? I'll give you the two sides of the coin. One side of the coin is, if you have a son like Avraham Avinu, you got to be doing something right, you know. Even though obviously Avraham Avinu's neshama came from God, but Avraham Avinu's neshama was in a guf. And the guf is connected to the parents, like it says in Tanya. So, what kind of woman was Avraham Avinu's mother? Was she a very righteous woman, even though she lived in a pagan world? And Avraham Avinu came from her because she was righteous? Or exactly the opposite? She was a mishas, she was an evil woman, and that's how the Eibishter operates. He sneaks kedusha into. He gets away with bringing good into the world by hiding it in a makam of ra. You see what I'm saying? There's two ways of looking at this. The mother of Avraham Avinu. Now I want you to know, and I'm saying this as an aside, one of the things that I once researched was Avraham Avinu's brother. Avraham Avinu had a brother whose name was Nachor, who had 12 children. And now she says Nachor's 12 children were like Yankov's 12 children, Yaakov's 12 children. 8 from his primary wife, who was Milcah. Milcah was Sarah's sister, as it says in Chumash, in the Pashas Noach. And the other 4 was from a Pilegesh, whose name was Re'uma. And there's a big Kabbalistic explanation for what Re'uma means. But I once researched this. I once researched the 12 sons of Nachor, because I give Parsha classes. I like to look for obscure subjects, like weird subjects. So I looked up Nachor's 12 sons, and you know what I found out? They were Goyim, obviously. But they were Nevi'im. They were in a very high level. They were on a very high level in their brain and their minds. Ad kadei kach that they were spiritual. There's actually an opinion that holds that the oldest son of Nachor, whose name is Utz, is Iyov. You ever heard of Iyov? Yeah. Iyov is a goy. And there's an entire Sefer Tanakh written about Iyov's life. Iyov started out as a very wonderful man with a lot of money and a lot of success. And the Eibishter tested him. The Satan came to the Eibishter and said, well, Iyov has wealth and he has honor and he has family. So the Eibishter tests Iyov and he suffers every imaginable suffering in the world. The only suffering he doesn't suffer, he doesn't die. He loses his family, loses his wealth, Alice. And the whole book of Iyov is that $1 million question that everybody's always asking. Why do bad things happen to good people? That's the book of Job. What you don't know about Iyov is that the book of Iyov was written by Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the oldest sefer in the Ksuvim. The Gemara says Moshe Rabbeinu wrote Iyov. It's older than all the Svarim of Tanakh. And Iyov was a great man. And he lived in a city called Utz. Ich hoya be'eretz Utz ve'Iyov shmoi. The oldest son of Nachor is Utz. As Utz b'choyroi. So there's an opinion that holds that the oldest son of Nachor is actually Iyov. So Avram's nephews were great people. They were prophets. They were goyim, but they were nevi'im. So you would assume that if Avram's nephews were nevi'im, Mistamin's brother was a navi. So you could assume further still that Terach, even though Terach was a bad guy, he worked for Nimrod, he was Eved Avodah Zarah, there was something very deep about him. In other words, Avraham Avinu was not born in a vacuum. He was surrounded by people who, at least on the level of brains, were extremely, extremely smart. Smart to the extent that they had certain intellectual sensitivities, or what you would call intuition, almost like Ruach HaKodesh. So there's reasons to say that Terach and Mrs. Terach were not just low, vulgar people. Even if they were Evdei Avodah Zarah, and we assume they were Evdei Avodah Zarah, the Midrashim say that they were Evdei Avodah Zarah, but their Avodah Zarah was on a very, very spiritual level. They were very intelligent, they were very deep, there was something very right about them. But Avraham rebelled against the Avodah Zarah, and he went in the direction of the truth, which is that there's only one God. So there's two ways to look at the mother of Avraham Avinu. Now, you want to know her name, right? So the Gemara Masechta Baba Basra tells us that her name was Amasloi, Aleph Mem Tov, which means emes, Lamed Aleph, which means no, and then a Yud. Amasloi Bas Karnevoi, Chof Reish Nun Beis Vav. I saw in one of the commentaries says that Karnevoi should really be keren with a kuf, which means like a horn or a high point. Amasloi Bas Karnev. This is the name of the mother of Avraham Avinu that's brought in the Gemara. However, I found other names. There's a sefer called Hayovlim, which is a medrash, that says that Avraham Avinu's mother's name was Edna, which means pleasant and sweet, Bas Aram, the daughter of Aram. And I was thinking that Aram is an adulteration of Adam. The difference between Aram and Adam is a little yud, right? Aresh and Dal are the same. This is what I was thinking. And then the Pirkei Rabbi Lezer, it's brought in the Sfarim that her name was Asidai, Aleph Tov Yud, Dalad Yud Yud, or Atirai, Aleph Ayin Tov Yud, Dalad Yud Yud, or Ayin Tov Reish Yud Yud. Now, Asidai means the future. Atirai with an Ayin either means to pray, or in Aramaic it means to be rich. Okay? So now, we got a bunch of information about Avraham Avinu's mother. Her name was Amasloi, or Edna, or Asidai, or Atirai. We also know his mother's father's name, and it was either Karnevoi or Aram, which I'm going with the leaning that Aram is actually Adam, but the Dalad is missing. And the difference between a Dalad and a Reish is Dalad is a good letter. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And Reish is a bad letter, right? V'Shem Elokim Acherim Lo Yisham Al Picha. So the Reish goes on not good, the Dalet goes on good. So if her father's name was Aram, an adulteration of Adam, that would mean to say that she came from good stock that got a little bit corrupted. So, should we look at Avraham Avinu as being mother being a righteous woman, that's why she had such a son? Or should we look at Avraham Avinu's mother as being somebody who was very, very not pure, and the Eibishter plants sparks of tzaddikim in Klippa, that's how he gets away with bringing them into the world. But I think whether we look at her as a good woman or a bad woman, I think we should sustain what I told you before, that considering what it says in the Midrashim about Avraham Avinu's nephews, Nochai's sons, Terach and his wife and that family were very, very smart. Because one of the prerequisites to being a Navi is a very strong brain. It's very strong brains. And they probably not only had strong brains, they probably lived good lives. They were good people. Their one weakness, which is the biggest weakness of all, was Avodah Zarah. They had this idea of negotiating with God, dividing and conquering. There's only one God, you can't negotiate with him. You got a couple of gods, you can work them against each other. This was a spiritual pursuit based on their intelligence. They were very smart, they're very spiritual, they're very intuitive, but they made a mistake. So we have to assume that this is the background from which Avraham Avinu emerges, okay? So now, if you look at the four possible names of Avraham Avinu's mother, the one that we all know is Amasloi, and the latter three, which is Edna, Asidai, or Atirai, which you can translate in two different ways, what do you got? How does it add up? So let's start with the first name, okay? In Hebrew, the word Amaslo, Aleph Mem Tov, Lamed Aleph, without the Yud, means excuse. When a person wants to give an excuse for something, you did something wrong, right? You lied. You lied in court. And because you lie in court, the court doesn't want to trust you. If you can come up with an excuse for why you lied, if you come up with a reason why you lied, then you can gain your trust back. The Hebrew word for an excuse is Amasla, Aleph Mem Tov, Lamed Aleph, which is the name of Avraham Avinu's mother, plus she has a Yud at the end. So the Rebbe said once, if I bring you know what Amasla means? Emes Lai. An excuse is not the truth. Emes Lai, truth it isn't. So you could look at Avraham Avinu's mother's name and say, she was a wonderful woman, she was probably very intelligent, that's why she was able to be the mother of Avraham Avinu. But truth, no. Truth, Emes Lai, she wasn't true, no. In other words, her life could have been incredibly great. She got caught up in the ways of Avodah Zarah, which makes her life a lie. But she has a yud at the end. Amasloi. So it's emes loi yud. so to emes loi means it's not the truth. But what does the yud mean? 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 There's a lot of ways of looking at it, right? But let's give her the most favorable read. Her metzius was to tell lies, to protect the yud. Avraham Avinu's mother, her name is Emes Loi. Her form is she deceives, she lies, she cheats, but she's protecting the yud. And the yud is Avraham Avinu, protecting her son, who's going to be the father of the Jewish people. Now, was she doing it on purpose? Was she understanding who Avraham Avinu was? Or she was doing it, just doing it? But whether she knew what she was doing or she didn't know what she was doing, the fact that her name is Emes Loi with a yud suggests that sometimes you have to lie, right? You don't tell the truth so that the yud should come out in the end, which is a very, very beautiful way of explaining her name. Now you must understand one thing. Girls, I need to say this, okay? I'm making this up. I have no sources for any of this. So it's a schmooze, that's all it is. This is a conversation. But it's not Torah, it's just me talking to you. You asked me for something, we're talking about it, okay? So that's how we're translating Amas Loi. Her second name is Edna. Edna means sweet. Now, is sweet good or bad? Is sweet good or bad? Sweet could hide something which isn't good, and sweet could present something which isn't good, right? If a person is very sweet, a person is a nice person, yeah? Is that niceness a sign of goodness? Or is that niceness a mask, a screen, which is hiding something which isn't good? You see what I'm saying? So you're talking about Avraham Avinu's mother. What was the nature of her Edna? What was the nature of her sweetness? Was the sweetness covering over something which is bad, or the sweetness actually something which is actually very correct? Now, Adnoi's, Edna's father's name is Aram. And I'm going with this insight that Aram means Adam with an adulterated reish. So you can spin that both ways. By the way, the yud that's missing on the back of the reish is the name Amas Loi, right? What's a dalet? A dalet is an reish with a yud at the back. You take that yud off and you put it in Amas Loi. I'm just playing around. So again, you can ask the same question. Was Avraham Avinu's mother's name was Edna bas Aram? Does that mean she was truly sweet? Even though her father, who should have been an Adam, lost his yud, his daughter didn't, and she's therefore protecting Avraham Avinu, or that her sweetness was deceptive, her sweetness was false, and the proof that her sweetness was false is because her father is an adulteration of the word Adam. It's Adam minus the yud. So in both names, in the name Amas Loi and the name Edna, you can say that she does good things, and you can wonder whether she does good things because she's good, or she's doing good things because she's got an interest. And I think this, you can look at it from both perspectives. Her third name is Asidai, which is very interesting. Asidai means the future. Now, if Asidai means the future, that means her whole purpose is what's going to come from her. Meaning, she was Terach's wife, she lived at a certain time, she lived in a certain place, she lived a certain way, but her whole identity is the fact that she's the mother of Avraham Avinu. And again, you can wonder, is this conscious or subconscious? Did Avraham Avinu's mother understand that she is going to bring something into the world which is part of a very important part of the future of the world? And she saw it as her mission to preserve it. She literally, the Midrashim say, that she did crazy things to protect Avraham Avinu. Nimrod wanted to kill her, Nimrod wanted to kill Avraham Avinu, and she did all kinds of things to keep that baby alive. So you could say, you can spin it that she was a person who knew and appreciated that the future of her little boy was very, very important, and she did what she could to keep him alive, or that she wasn't so righteous, but it turned out, nevertheless, to be that her Metzias would preserve Avraham Avinu. So again, each name you can interpret both ways. And the last name is Atirai, Ayin Tov Reish Yud Yud. In Chumash, the word Eter means to daven, to pray. When Yitzchak and Rivka davened, remember Yitzchak and Rivka davened? The Lashon in the Pasuk, Vaye'etar, Vav Yud Ayin Tov Reish. It's the same word. That it means to daven. Now, if you're going to say that Avraham Avinu's mother's name was Atirai, it's kind of hard to say that she was a bad woman because she's davening. And we have to assume if she's davening to the Eibishter. So, if we're not sure about how to translate Amasloi, if we're not sure how to translate Edna, if we're not sure how to translate Asidai, but I think Atirai, if it means to daven, you have to assume that on all the first three names, she understood that her son was going to be a tzaddik and she's protecting him. In other words, the emes loy is protecting the yud. The Edna Bas Aram is not being like her father, who's a lie, but she's being emes. And the same is true Asidai, that she thinks about the future. But the word Atirai in Aramaic means rich. Rich. Now, is being rich a good thing or a bad thing? If the money's in my pocket, it's a wonderful idea. If the money's in your pocket, well, it depends what I'm going to get out of you, yeah? Right, rich. Now, in Jewish thought, who is the mashal for a rich person? I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to keep it in suspense. The mashal for a rich person is Moshe Rabbeinu. The mashal, we talked about this in the previous class. The mashal for the poor person is David HaMelech or Mashiach. Remember that came up? It came up last week, did it not? No, I didn't talk to you about this? That Mashiach, the story I told you about all the people come into the palace and one guy goes straight into the king and the king says, I'm looking for you. And that's Mashiach. We talked about this. The rich person is Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu is called rich. The only level which is higher than Moshe Rabbeinu is rich is Mashiach's poor. So when Chassidus, when Torah talks about wealth, it doesn't mean money, although money is a wonderful thing. There's two kinds of money. There's two kinds of money. Money that controls you or money that you control. If money controls you, it makes you crazy. If money that you control, it makes you righteous. And the more money you have, the more the money controls you, the crazier you'll be. And the more money you have, the more you control your money, the more righteous you'll be. Moshe Rabbeinu was rich, beruchnius and begashmius, but he controlled his wealth, so it was a positive thing. So let's go with this. Okay, let's sort of summarize everything we just said. The name Emes Loi with a Yud means telling a lie to keep the Yud alive. The name Edna means to be pleasant, even though her father was a distortion of Adam, she was righteous. That's how we're going to do it, okay? The name Asidai means she saw the future, and the name Atirai means she davened to protect her son, and that she personally had an enormous amount of wealth, and we're going to translate that wealth as intelligence and spirituality, which were gifts that she gave her son Avraham Avinu.